O ministro da Educação de Ontário, esteve em Lecce, esteve hoje em conferência com os média étnicos canadianos. O jornalista Nuno Adães, do Correio da Manha Canadá, marcou presença na conferência e teve a oportunidade de falar diretamente com o ministro. Ora veja.
Resources to support safe schools for this coming school year alone, $1.6 billion. And all of you have heard the ads by the unions and by the Liberals and New Democrats suggesting that we're going to reduce spending, when in fact I proudly announce that we are increasing expenditure just to deal with COVID alone, $1.6 billion. Now remember, you may have heard that number before, $1.6 billion. Where's that coming from? That's the number we had this year for the current school year. But the federal government provided us a significant amount of those dollars. Next year, we're doing it alone, exclusively the province, 100% investing to make sure that we have public health nurses within our schools again. We doubled it last year. We're maintaining it this year. That we maintain the highest mental health investment ever recorded in Ontario history. It's not even close. If you compare it under the Wynne Del Duca Liberals, it's a 400% increase in mental health supports that could hire upwards of 1,000 mental health workers directly supporting therapy and intervention for kids. It is a plan that allows us to expand asymptomatic testing within our schools, the only province to have that type of initiative. A plan that allows for hundreds of millions of dollars for PPE, quality masks, and other materials that will help keep our students and our staff safe. It's a plan that invests specifically in learning recovery, recognizing that many people around the world have really faced challenges in reading and in math. So we have announced an $85 million targeted plan specifically focused on helping support those kids that have seen some regression in math, in reading, and really giving them targeted supports. And some of the things I'm excited to promote to you. Students will now be able to access math tutors in English and in French. Specialized, these are math teachers who are providing targeted one-on-one or small group tutoring support. That is the type of intervention we're looking at that's going to help unleash their potential. We are as well proudly saying that for new educators in Ontario, you need to meet a grade 9 math standard. You need to be able to do basic grade 9 math because for too many years under the former Liberals, students were not performing well. We've also, as part of our learning recovery plan, really put an emphasis on students within the special education community, those with intellectual or developmental disability, and students who've potentially withdrawn from our schools, trying to re-engage them and create pathways for them to learn again. In addition, when it comes to the funding vehicle for school boards, it's something called the Grant for Student Needs. That grant for student needs, essentially the grant that goes to school boards to help them fund their operations every year, is increasing by over $500 million, $561 million increase next year alone, plus the $1.6 billion and the learning recovery plan. That is the single largest investment ever recorded in Ontario history. It's happening under our progressive conservative government. I'm proud of that because for Khalid, for myself, we believe in our heart in public education. We want young people to succeed. We want them to be safe, which is why we put in place a plan that has allowed Ontario to have one of the lowest case rates of young people under 20 in Canada. It is not a coincidence. It's by design. We put in place a plan that invests with a full support of Ontario and has the full seal of approval of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. And I'm proud of that. And I know as we look forward to September, our aim is to make school more normal, extracurriculars, physical education, let kids be kids. That's our ambition. And that's why we put the funding in place to do that, using every public health intervention that's been required, that's been recommended. Anything recommended, we have done. In fact, there's over $300 million for staffing, for more teachers and more custodians to make sure that our schools are safe, that the safety is maintained, the screening is maintained, and as well as testing capacity, which we are funded for, the only province to do it. So I'm very pleased that we've made those investments, more support for remote learning. And I believe it is a strength, colleagues, that parents in Ontario have the choice of in class this September or online. Now, look, I'm a big supporter of in-class learning. I think most children benefit from it. But at the end of the day, we do not know where this pandemic is going to take us. If there's a lesson learned, I think all of us must acknowledge we have to be ready for every circumstance. We have been ready since this past September. It's why we were able to start in school, keep kids in school all for the first semester. Then after Christmas break, after cases spiked because of transmission in the household and the community, we were able to seamlessly pivot back online, back in class, and now back online. And now while we seek to make a more stable school year, keeping those community rates down, keeping our schools open. The bottom line is we are uniquely positioned to do that, having the infrastructure, the capacity, having built an online learning system, raising the standards, training our teachers, procuring almost 200,000 devices and computers, almost 9,000 internet connections. That is proactive leadership, thinking ahead of the curve when it comes to building the system. It was opposed by the unions, opposed by the Liberals, opposed by the Democrats. At the end of the day, it was supported by parents who just said, look, I want to make the decision. I love my child being in school 100%. In this environment, I live with my grandmother, I live with an immunocompromised child. Insert the personal story here. At the end of the day, mom and dad knows best, and you should be the one making that decision, and we're going to respect it. And of course, we continue to promote mental health services for those kids in class or those learning online. But at the end of the day, we're making sure this September, you have that choice. So that gives you a flavor of what we've done, what we have announced. And I just want to reaffirm to you, we're going to continue to push hard to get these schools open. It is so critical for mental health, but it has to be safe. And as we look to September, I'm really feeling cautiously optimistic that kids will have more latitude, more comfort, and I think a more safer community for schools to operate within. Thank you.
Hello, Minister. Hello to the entire audience. My question about the Portuguese community. What resources will be allocated to Little Portugal schools? I refer the schools that are located in the Portuguese area of Toronto. Some of these schools are very old.
Thank you, Nuno. I appreciate that. What I can say is within our grant for student needs, funding for international languages is available to all school boards across the province, which I think is critical, be it before and after school programs, lunchtime, weekends, in the summer, the extended day program. This is critical. And we are very much committed to supporting that expansion in those languages in our schools, because I believe not because I come from a heritage language community as well, because my parents were immigrants and spoke, first language was Italian. No, it's not why. I believe young people benefit from international languages. It gives them a competitive advantage. If they want to work in the global market, they need to speak multiple languages. So supporting language, I think, is really critical. And that's really why we've provided such a significant increase in supports for languages within our schools. What I'd also say is there is because a lot of people in Canada were affected, not a lot of newcomers entering Canada last year, the enrollment within our languages program went down. But yet, even though the enrollment is down, usually the funding would go down based on enrollment. We said, no, we're going to not only maintain the funding, we're going to enhance it, because we want people, especially those coming to our country or those that have been here for a few years, to have the full supports to learn English or French so that they could better integrate, get access to job and life skills, and just support their kids who are learning themselves. That's the type of approach we've taken to supporting communities in Ontario. We're very proud of the Portuguese community who have made an incredible difference in Canada, especially during the pandemic. And we want them to know we're going to continue to support these languages within our schools, recognizing, as you know, that the school boards, not the Ministry of Education, decides which languages, if any, to provide. I want to be honest and transparent. I don't get to dictate in Toronto, you're going to teach the following languages. No, the school board does based on the community, based on the need, the demand. But I support them, and I've continued to be an advocate of international languages in Ontario.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your effort let me voice my colleague Shazia about the great efforts you did, especially in the online learning, because we saw a big difference from the spring of 2020 and the fall and the 21, fall of 20 and 21 till now. It's a very big difference, and thank you for that. My questions regarding that we have some news about another waves coming, God forbid, but it might happen. And by proof, we saw that the children, our kids, the students might stay at home for a long time. The majority of the students will have more online learning next year if the vaccine wouldn't control enough the spread of this COVID-19. My question to you, are you able to make some changes in the budgets to make it more for online learning and to remove some items which for the opening of the schools, like the PPE and the cleaning costs and such stuff in the schools?
Thank you so much, Rami. And I should just say, obviously, for those that celebrated Easter, for our Orthodox friends, I just want to wish you a very happy and joyous Easter. I hope, Rami, you're able to take some time off and maybe even have a beverage. But anyway,
thank you very much.
Of course. So what I'd say is we're doing both. I mean, we believe that, yes, parents and students should have the choice. So in the budget, we announced $40 million over 2 years for expanding and improving remote learning infrastructure. We also are on track to have every single school in Ontario, finally in 2021, under our government, every school will be connected to the internet. That's a huge transformation. We helped purchase 200,000 laptops for kids that needed it, 9,000 to 10,000 internet connections for families that are facing difficulty, maybe they don't have access or are able to afford internet. We've helped subsidize and support that. So we've really built it up. We've then done training for our teachers to lift the standards of online learning. So we did that. Then in the most recent announcement I made just this past week, $15 million more being delivered for technology, specifically focused on more purchases of technology and the improvement of that infrastructure for September. The choice will remain a choice this year, not an imposition. You make the choice, knowing that all students are in school. Only unless you decide to enroll them online, your kid's in school, full stop. Let these conspiracy theories that the opposition and the unions and the liberals like to put out there, folks, your kids are going to school in person in September. If you believe it is a right for you and your family and your child to put them online, you now have that choice for this coming school year. Because look, the pandemic, as much as I'm an optimistic person, I'm a realist. Who knows what's going to happen over the next 4, 5, 6 months? We look forward. I'm an optimistic, cautiously optimistic that the next couple months are going to be better, but we don't know. So you're going to have the choice, and that's important. And we're going to continue to provide those critical investments of PPE. Look, based on the public health advice in July, the chief medical officer of health is going to say to us, here's the final advice for schools. Based on where we're at, the amount of vaccines, the amount of young people that get vaccines, based on, the community rates, et cetera, all these actions, we believe we may not even require, for example, masking in schools for high school if the kids get access to vaccines. So we're going to know that in July, the details, but I'm just saying to you, no matter what Dr. Williams and the Chief Medical Officer of Health recommends, we're going to be ready. We have a fully funded plan for the worst case, hoping for the best case. And I think that's the right responsible plan we put in place for families.
Mr. Lecce, good to see you today. First of all, we welcome the announcement made by you and for all the investment for the schools for this next session. My concern is in regard to the air travel. Premier Ford was, many of the times he said, just suspend the air travel for time being, because, or you also came forward to ask the federal to stop the air travel because many of the variants are entering the country. Now question is, you said that teachers, kids or students, they might be affected. We are preparing for the September classes or optional online or classes in person. But why federal is not listening? Because today 23 more cases appeared and 23 more flights we came to know that they landed or they departed from Pearson International Airport. Federal is not listening because Ontario is one of the biggest province, and if the variants keep on entering, so we'll be keep on fighting on that. Why federal is not listening for the to the premier, or when you also made an announcement to that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to let Khalid maybe build upon it, but what I would simply say to you is Canada, took a decision under the federal government. We did not stop the United Kingdom variant from entering Canada. We were one of the only countries to close the borders for a few days. We were delayed in the announcement, and we were one of the first countries in the G7 to reopen our borders to the United Kingdom. The UK variant represents the vast majority of cases in Ontario. 90% of cases today are variants of concern, and they came here from our borders. So it is frustrating that the Prime Minister has not acted and continues not to act, even after the Premier called him personally last Thursday, appealing for him to act. So I'm very concerned of the lack of action because it's costing us all longer stay-at-home orders, longer restrictions, closed schools, and of course, small businesses continue to hurt. We need action at the border. We're taking action in Ontario. We're enhancing our testing capacity, making vaccines, bringing them right into our businesses and our warehouses and our construction sites to get to the root cause, increasing the amount of vaccine in the hotspots of, let's say, Peel, for example, in Toronto and other communities, and extending the stay-at-home order to try to keep people home, reduce mobility. We all have a role to play. The federal government has two jobs: protect our borders and get us vaccines. On both, they have really failed. The vaccines came late, which is why we have a third wave, and the variants continue to be the majority of cases. And if we don't act, we could have a fourth wave. So we are imploring the federal government and the Liberals, get on with doing the right thing, even if it is tough. Close the borders, close the loopholes at the border. I know people who've flown to Florida only to fly back to Buffalo and walk across the border. I literally know people who have walked across the border, taken a cab. You can take a helicopter. It avoids the quarantine requirement. So we're asking them to do that so that we can prevent another wave, and more importantly, so that for all of us and for our families and our communities, we can get back to some sense of normal. But Khalid, you've been leading this, so you may have more to say.
No, Minister, actually, you said it so perfectly that one of the reasons why we are seeing all these cases within our communities in this province, the number one reason is because we were not able to control our borders. And as Premier, I think since last year, August, September, he has been asking the federal government, as you know, the borders come under federal government jurisdictions. And he has been asking all along that we need to secure our borders. On a personal level, I think that we had done really well to control during the first wave and the second. But now, actually, you are seeing more of the variants of concern, and whether it's the Brazilian, South African, and lately the Indian variant. And all along, we are literally I would say begging the federal government to please secure our borders. And there is one analogy that I always use is that, if you have a leaky roof, the water is just going to pour in like crazy. And for us, the vaccine is the wall, but our roof is still has a lot of holes. And you see all these variants coming in. And unless we secure the roof properly, we will continue to see these variants coming in. And Nitin, as you just said, since Feb, more than 5,000 cases we have seen are variants of concern. And once they go in our community, they multiply in different numbers. So, through you, I would say that please, you as a journalist also reach out to the Prime Minister's office and ask them that as Ontarians, we need to secure our borders, and we need to do it now before it's too late. So thank you very much.